Thank you for joining us for the why of summer services. I'm Kim Poe. I'm the Children and Young Adult Consultant with the Connecticut State Library.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Danielle Margarita. I'm the Youth Services Coordinator at the Rhode Island Office of Library and Information Services.
So we're going to give you just a quick outline of what we're going to do today. So the information that we're going to be presenting to folks today has grown from a grant-funded project that Danielle and I are part of, along with a couple of other state consultants across the country that we call BEEBS or BEBS. It stands for Building Equity-Based Summers. So today we are going to go over why equity in summer services particular. We're going to talk a little bit about why we do summer at all and sort of naming your why. We're going to have two just quick breakout activities today, nothing super long because we have an hour. We're going to talk about quality principles and indicators of summer programming. We're going to give you a little bit more information about the Building Equity-Based Summers, and we'll take some questions and share our contact information so that folks can follow up with us.
All right, great. Thanks, Kim. So first, as part of this project, we started first talking about equity and why it's important, why center library services in equity. Equity is foundational. Only on a bedrock of equity are library staff able to build and encourage strong and vibrant communities. Equity serves everyone. Libraries are one part of a greater community ecosystem, which includes systemically marginalized youth, families, and adults. Equity requires sharing power. It's crucial that individuals from systemically marginalized groups have opportunities to bring their unique lived experiences to the design and the delivery of community-based services. Equity embraces shared humanity and basic rights. Social justice and liberation require equity-based solutions. And the goals for library staff are clear here. As public servants, staff must center community needs over the desires of libraries and staff must focus on solutions and not problems. And I'm also going to say that as we go through our session today, to be bold in your thinking about equity beyond access. So often when we talk about equity, we're talking about our communities having access to the library, having access to the stuff. So today, just to keep that in mind, to think beyond the access. So now to get to summer services, the why of summer services. So the why defines your purpose. When thinking about the why of your equity-based summer services, ask yourself, what is the purpose of these services? Keep in mind the importance of thinking about the purpose and the why within the context of the community and the impact that why can have on the community. For example, a why whose purpose is to bring community members into the library during the summer is focused on the library and not the community. A why that is community focused might look like this. Provide opportunities for systemically marginalized community members to engage in activities together. With a community focused why, you can begin to reimagine summer services to reach that why. So we're going to do an activity today and we're going to think about our whys together. So we're going to use Jamboard. We'll share the link in the chat, and we're going to take about 5 minutes to post your summer services whys. We have multiple frames, so if one frame in the Jamboard fills up, just go straight to the next one. After 5 minutes, we're going to take a gallery walk of the whys, which just means we're going to take a couple minutes for everyone to go through all of the frames, all of the stickies, and see what resonates with you, and to see what feels realistic and what does not feel realistic. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. All right, and the Jamboard is in the chat. Great, Kim. And I'll just do a real quick, oh, people are already hopping to it. Oh my gosh, you all are so good. So if you haven't used Jamboard, If you go 1, 2, 3, 4 down, there's a sticky note here. You click it and a sticky will pop up that you can just start typing in. If you find that this first frame, am I sharing the right screen, everyone? Yes. Okay, great. If this frame, if you find that it fills up, if you click up here, this arrow, you can go right to the next frame and just keep filling them up, okay? So we'll take, it's 11:06, so we'll take till 11:11.
And I do see some people in the chat. Yeah, sometimes it'll say that the Jamboard is filled up. We have the same issue that happens sometimes with the Google. So maybe just give it a few minutes and then try to get back in, or we can really quickly like just create another one and share that as well.
If you're comfortable sharing your why in the chat, I mean, the Jamboard is more anonymous, but if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat and you can't get into the Jamboard, please do use the chat and we can take a look in both places. Also, too, if you want to make notes of your whys the old-fashioned way on paper, that works too. Oh, if we've shared, oh, great. Emily, thanks. If you've already shared in the Jamboard, you can close it out to let others in. And then I will pull it back up and share the screen when we do our gallery walk so that folks don't have to be in the Jamboard. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing so that we can all see each other again. So what first, what's resonating with people? What are you noticing in some of the whys that we have up on our boards and in our chat? Feel free to unmute yourself.
There's a lot of interconnectivity, like community connections and safe spaces that people are writing and giving, like continuing ed, but also like, it's not just like the learning component of like book stuff. I'm seeing a lot of people are putting other things, right? Like the emotional, social components that are really important.
I'm going to piggyback on that. That, you know, during COVID, everybody sort of just went their own way. And now I feel like our job is to create more opportunities for communities to come back together and build like a better understanding of everybody, to stop, you know, the misconceptions of people and, you know, hate and all that. We are a great place to get people to just talk to each other. So I like that about the summer reading.
Oh, here, we'll put the Post-its back up. So I'm curious and wondering, because it's mentioned in several Post-its, learning loss and the summer slide. How do we know if services are achieving this? And is there evidence of success in this area?
I think when kids are engaged in weekly challenges that are around reading, and for me, I include writing and drawing pictures as well, of characters from books that they've enjoyed. I feel like when they're engaged in some way, in a creative way, in reading and writing, then to me that the engagement piece means they're maybe getting something out of it, out of the programming that we're offering. And in terms of measurement, though, this is a tough one because I feel like there's been a lot of slide already with COVID, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from teachers and parents, guardians that their kids are behind, and I'm even noticing a little bit of that when I do some of my programs, like just little things like craft programs I do weekly, and like some of their scissor skills are really like poor, and I have to cut a lot of things for the kiddos. I think maybe that's more screen related, but
I wonder if with the reading logs or the reading journals, if the kids would get, if schools that they're connected with, if they turn them in, like a copy of them to the schools, if then that was a tracking tool for teachers. I mean, because I think all that Tracy just said is like cool and essential, and that's what I see, but I haven't tracked. I don't know. That would be the only way. It's like you said, Mary, to partner with the schools and run a study. I mean, and that might be a way, a tracking tool from what they've read, and if they've even participated in a summer reading. I guess we could send a list of these kids participated in some reading, but we have a lot of challenges where you can't say, like there's certain things where you have to be cautious about when you're telling people are participating or not, or when they're checking out books or not, right? So it's a good thought.
True. And thinking about tracking, I'm wondering myself about how does tracking show success in this area? How does tracking prove that it was successful in addressing learning loss or summer slide?
do you mean tracking like the weekly logs, or however libraries are tracking things?
However you're tracking participation, right? That's a whole nother conversation, right? That we could have is what does participation look like for a variety of libraries, but
right. I mean, even last year when I did this at another library, I prefer paper logs myself. And like I mentioned, a lot of my challenges are not specific to reading. They'll be like, build a Lego, character based on a book that you read with a guardian or parent, or get a suggestion from your librarian, so that we can like build some social skills there. And yeah, like in terms of tracking, like I knew that some of them were doing some of that work because I could see it in the library, but then it was just trusting the parents or guardians that the kid was doing it. I wasn't really strict about any of that, though. I was just like, if they even did one challenge, I was excited because we're coming out of COVID and things are hard for people. But I was all about trying to make reading fun and or storytelling fun, or writing a fun exercise that included drawing and building too.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, there's a comment in the chat, the impact is real, whether it's easy to measure or not. And so, right, this is a whole conversation is measurement. But to build off of that and sort of thinking about the impact, checking out people's whys, I'm also wondering, is who is being reached. So first we talk about the summer slide and we talk about, sort of that purpose, but if we bring it back to also who's being reached by our whys, and how do we know? Again, it's another, how do we know? How do we know that we're reaching those youth, families, even adults?
Danielle, to that question. So I stuck my sticky note in there about like going out to the community and meeting people where they are, as opposed to just having them come to us, and to try to engage with people in the community. And that's hard. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not saying it's easy at all, but that's because the only people that we're gonna see, if you're basing it off of who's in the library, is who's in the library and who's engaging with us in the library. But if you can somehow get out into the community and try to engage with them where they are, then at least you're picking up on even if it's a smaller percentage, at least a percentage of people who can't get to the library.
Yeah, and I like your point in that it is decentering the library. And I think that's something that we really, really struggle with. We want to bring teens into the library, or we want people to come and do the things and use our stuff. And so sort of reframing how we think about the library. And I'm going to share, it's a loose quote, but a colleague shared it the other day in speaking with the director of a rural library in her state. And the director had said, usually when I'm promoting the library, I say the library is the heart of the community. But now I'm thinking that the community is the heart of the library. And so I think that really speaks to sort of reframing maybe some whys so that it's centering community instead of library. All right, this is great, everyone. We have another activity, so I do want to move it along. We could talk forever about this, and I really appreciate you being bold and authentic. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I'm going to pass it on to Kim.
Sorry, too many screens, too many things. That was great. I think summer reading is a long-standing tradition in public libraries in particular. So I think your brain can do some really interesting things when we start to ask different types of questions about the why of summer reading in particular. So Danielle did a really great job sharing and sort of guiding us through an activity of the why of summer. But so now we're going to talk a little bit about some quality principles and indicators for summer reading. We mentioned that a lot of this training that Danielle and I are sharing has come from an IMLS grant program. We are in year 1 of year 3, but even this current IMLS grant program was built off of an IMLS grant program that started in California with the California Library Association and California State Library. So through a multitude of work around equity and summer programming, we've settled on some quality principles and indicators. So principles are meant to guide libraries in developing a quality summer program. A lot of what we talk about with regards to summer, some of that information is for parents, right? Like it's really helpful to read 15 minutes a day with your kid. But what about the libraries, right? So sort of what's something that we can offer? So the indicators are signposts or checkpoints to help staff determine whether their program achieves a given quality principle. We talked a little bit about how hard it can be to measure some things. So we're going to touch base on some indicators and ways to do that. a little bit. Equity-based quality principles and indicators focus on the key areas that library staff must acknowledge in order to build equity-based summer services and provide benchmarks for successing in each area. And those are benchmarks for us as library institutions. These quality principles and indicators, that's what the QPI stands for, provide a frame to look through as you investigate your summer why. So all of this connects. So this is a really hefty frame. We're gonna touch base on some things here. I'm gonna take this moment to remind you that these slides are available in the library tote bag, or in the Summer Summit tote bag. So do not worry about trying to write all of this down. But so as we said, our principles are meant to guide the library. So the principles that we're looking at here are summer services are designed and implemented with community voice. We talked a little bit about that, and we saw some of that represented in the Post-its. So what are some indicators that you are reaching or striving for that principle? So systemically marginalized community members are actively engaged as co-designers in all aspects of summer services, including design, implementation, assessment, and evaluation. And this is some of what Danielle was kind of prompting us towards with regards to what is it that our community members need, and then encouraging them to design those programs with us. So it's not just that they tell the library what they need or want, but they are active participants in the designing of those needs. The summer program expands and harnesses trusted relationships across the community. Library staff trust and empower partners to take center stage. So again, that's centering the community. And then what can the library do, because the community is the heart of the library. The summer program celebrates systemically marginalized community members' interests and assets. So my library might have a 3D printer, and that might be super great for my library and its existence of a 3D printer. But what if the community members want something else, right? So that's not to say that like we take the 3D printer and we throw it in the trash, but for summer services, we go and we find, ways to uplift what it is that the community members want. And maybe that's like a seed library, right? Because maybe like agriculture is really prevalent in that particular community. So then and I'm not going to see, I kind of talk fast. So another principle that we're looking at, right, is summer service library decision-making processes are embedded in an equity-based community mindset. Particularly now, centering equity is really at the forefront of many library conversations. Not all, and that's okay, but many of us talk about ways to make our libraries more equitable. So what does that mean? A diverse set of staff voice are integrated into the design and implementation of summer services. So, particularly when talking with our colleague, Anna, who works predominantly with adult services, Anna reminds us that summer reading is for everybody. So what might a summer program look like if we reach out to folks in the adult services department and include their brains and their ideas into the overall summer programming, especially as it looks like many of us are moving to intergenerational programming. I am 35 years old and I have no children, and I want to do something over the summer too, right? So what ways can we meet the needs of all of our community members from, birth to, Betty White, may she rest in peace. Ongoing professional development provides all staff with an understanding of the why of equity-based summer services. So many of us, particularly those of us who've been in libraries for a long time, we know summer, we've got a system, we've got a routine, we've got things that we do. But I think it's also really beneficial if we challenge ourselves to, like this event here, which is why we do Summer Summit, to engage in professional development opportunities that might give us some brain thoughts and juices that, even though we are seasoned in summer reading and summer services, sort of new thoughts percolate, especially as our communities shift, as people age. Funding and staff resources provided for summer services are centered on meeting the needs of systemically marginalized youth and families. boy, funding. I'm sure we've all been there, but finding ways to allocate funding if possible so that you can really and truly service the needs of the community can go a long way towards participation and, us fulfilling their needs. Library staff working on summer services actively inform and engage with administrators and managers. We've all got a supervisor, so keeping them involved to the greatest ability that they have, right? Their capacity is ultimately only going to help us. If our supervisors understand the impact of what it is that we're offering, in theory, they're more likely to support us. So then summer services expand opportunities for learning and connection. There are some libraries across the country who are beginning to shift their summer services from a summer reading to a summer learning model. What does that mean, and what might that mean for your community? I have a younger sister who has learning disabilities, and reading is a struggle for her, whereas I was that kid who was really proud to read 100 books in a summer because I was a nerd and I didn't have anything else to do. We have equal capacity for learning. I learned through reading, and my sister learns through different types of activities. So what might that mean, and what might that look like? Multiple formats of learning are encouraged and include text-based, multimedia, mentors and coaches, and group and individual activities. We hope to share some of those methods here throughout the Summer Summit. Girls Who Code was a really good example of possible mentor and coach situations, as well as group and individual activity. There's learning going on, even if there isn't traditional reading and like beating, for example. Depends on the kid, depends on the community, but we want to keep all of that in mind as we build our summer services. Summer provides opportunities for access to quality literacy and enrichment activities to systemically marginalized youth and family. I think enrichment is a really powerful and important word there. Opportunities to learn about a multitude of things are going to stick in brains differently. And we want to make sure that we're providing those activities as well in our summer programming, right, as the library institutions. Summer services actively engage systemically marginalized youth, families, and communities. So multiple methods of participation, paper participation, digital participation. In the state of Connecticut, we provide Read Squared to everybody. But then also opening up and leaving those options open for however they're going to work for people is something to consider. We saw during COVID, not everybody can access information the way that we're lucky to be able to do in our home. We don't want to forget that in summer just because we get into a routine of how we've always done things. Summer services are hosted and facilitated by community members, organizations, and stakeholders. Get folks involved in your community summer programming. We have a very rural library in the state of Connecticut, and they involve everyone. They're one coffee shop. They involve kids can win the ability to milk a cow. That's how they do incentives in this rural town. Ride on a fire truck, make a local coffee drink at your local coffee shop. Involve everyone in your community so that they can sort of foster the success of those who are participating in your summer programming. And library staff acknowledge and actively work to overcome barriers to participation, including internal policies, job descriptions, structures, and systems, external factors such as transportation and family structures. These are all big things. These are all big words. None of this is going to happen between now and May, and that's fine. These are just some things to keep in mind as we really settle in and think about building community summer or summer programs for our community. It's just bigger, I think, than sometimes we give it credit for. And I'm seeing sort of the chat about scratch tickets. I used to do scratch tickets. They were so much fun. So moving on to our next slide, and this is actually another activity. We do know that the Jamboards can get kind of packed. Some people are already using the Jamboards. I'm in love with that. Because this is also available through the virtual tote bag. So even after even after the summit is over, folks can still go back and look at all this information and look at our look at our things. So we're going to take this one board at a time, I think might be the best way. And we're going to give a few minutes for each board. But on these Jamboards, Danielle, if you want to maybe screen share this just so we can kind of take a look at it. What you'll see is our principles and indicators up at the top of the board. So on board 1, we see summer services are designed and implemented with community voice, right? So there's one principle that we want for our summer programs. So we are going to grab Post-its, grab your typing tools and just sort of sit and think with that for a few minutes. What does that mean to you? What does it mean to you that summer services are designed and implemented with community voice? How might you or do you implement whatever it is that means to you? And what are questions that you have about the idea that summer services and are designed and implemented with community voice? So for anyone who's not able to get into this board, feel free to drop in the chat, just like we did with our last activity. It is 11:37. I'm going to give us 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll go to the next board and the next board and the next board. If this board fills up, board 2 and 3 are the same activity. So feel free to just move on to another board if the first one fills up with Post-its. And again, feel free to use that chat to share your thoughts as well if you're not able to get into this board. We are going to, oh my gosh, this is so lovely. And just as another reminder, this Jamboard is not going to go anywhere. I really encourage folks to come back to these Jamboards and have conversations with your departments, just other members of your library as you're beginning to plan your summer programs, because there's some really great ideas and some great thought questions to go through as a group and figure out what those answers might be for your community. We are going to go over to board 4, if you don't mind, Danielle, which is our next quality principle question. So now we're going to sit and think about summer service library decision-making processes are embedded in equity and an equity-based community mindset. An equity-based community mindset. What does that mean to you? How might you do you implement that? And what are some questions that you have about it? So again, feel free to grab those Post-its and use the chat as well. Seeing some great things in here, programs that are reflective of our community. Making programs accessible, time, ability, interest. There's some really great questions in here. How do you reach people in the community you rarely see in the building? How do we get buy-in? I love the how that just came in the chat. Suggest a meet and greet, a connection fair, or matching desires to programs. It's a really great idea. Are there opportunities in your community? I know here in the town that I live in, there's an Apple Fest every fall. That might be a way to sort of get out there. Are there local community organizations where people congregate? Local churches that maybe cater to the Hispanic community in the town where you are, things like that.
I know a lot of, I'm sure it's not just Vermont, but a lot of libraries table and go to farmers markets. And like you were saying, apple picking, work with other farms and things like that too, which is a great way to connect.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love the Apple Fest. There aren't nearly as many apples at our Apple Fest as one would think. It's a little weird, but that's okay. I go for the apple donuts anyway.
Wait, where are the apples?
There's like no app. There's like candied apples and apple like donuts and like that. There's no apples. This is great. Okay, just sort of looking at the clock because I want to make sure I leave some time in case anyone has any questions or any share outs. finish up your thoughts here, and then we are going to go to our next principle, which is on number 7. Summer services expand opportunities for learning and connection. So again, we have the same questions for this different principle. What does that mean, that summer services expand opportunities for learning and connection? How might you or do you implement that? And what are your questions about it? So board 7, once you finished up your thought on your last, the last board, and again, feel free to share in the chat. I've got my boxes organized so that I can see some of those as they come in too. A maple test. There's a group here in Connecticut. It's actually nationwide, and they are supposed to do like a maple tapping event, and I'm just like ready for it. I'm so excited, and whatever that entails, I have no idea. I've never done it.
It's really easy.
Is it? That's what I've heard.
The tree does the work. If it's the right weather, you just put the tap in, it just flows out. It's amazing.
It's literally exactly like the tree does it all. And I'm like, I don't.
The tree does it. Yeah.
I'm really excited. New England is so lucky to have fall. It's like the best. Get rid of throw away all the other seasons. I'm here for fall. Yes, so, and feel free, again, share in the chat. Very fair, Emily. Summer services expand opportunities for learning and connection. What does that mean to you? How might you or do you implement? And what questions might there be for that? Yay, I love that. Who said this? In the chat, I think a smile goes a long way. It really does sometimes. Times have been tough. Sometimes just someone being smiled at and welcomed is going to go farther than we'll ever know. Of course, no one has to smile at anyone. Like, I get it. Like, especially, some of us hear that trash a lot, but just being kind to someone as they walk in and like, hi, I'm here if you need any help. Oh my God, 20 gallons of syrup. Send some of that down here. I just bought pancake mix at Aldi's the other day because I'm lazy and I'm only one person. I'm not making it from scratch. I love the idea of bringing in speakers to add voice. Okay, so go ahead and finish up your thoughts. I'm looking at the clock. I'm horrible at time management. And we are going to go to our last principle, which is on slide little 10 here. And summer services actively engage systemically marginalized youth, families, and community. I'm going to read that again. Summer services actively engage systemically marginalized youth, families, and communities. This is something that we as libraries are striving to achieve. What does this mean to you? How might you or do you implement it? And what are your questions? I'm just going to take about 2 or 3 minutes. Oh, I love this one that just came in the chat. Some libraries arrange 30-day temporary e-cards that are distributed to farmers markets. Oh, from Anna. Thanks, Anna. I used to work on a bookmobile at one of my libraries, and we wound up in a lot of locations where there are a lot of folks who lived in temporary shelters. And we know that one policy, which is something to think about for getting a library card to ultimately access resources, is that you have to have an address and you have to have proof of that address. We would issue temporary cards to anyone who wanted them so that they could access library resources, which might mean a computer to apply for a job or to identify, resources to help in the situation. And it really was a way to engage and support, folks in tough situations. love the idea of an ambassador. Play to everyone's strengths. If there's something that someone is really passionate about, then, you know, let them lead and provide support. That's also a really great way to free up our capacity if we're partnering with other people who have passions, and we may provide, you know, space that frees up our capacity and our, you know, sort of mental space. But the program and services are still being offered for community members who may benefit from them. Okay, so it is 11:51. So we are going to move on from this activity because time is real. And Danielle, are you finishing us off or am I? I forgot.
I don't know.
Well,
do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is a lot. And we touched on a lot today in just under an hour. So this is actually part of, as Kim had noted, this is part of a larger project that the Connecticut State Library and OLIS, we're one of 6 state library agencies piloting this project. And it's being led, as Kim noted, by the California Library Association, the California State Library, and we're working on developing shared equity language and a set of tools and resources for library staff to use to build equity, to build community-centered, equitable summer services for youth, families, and communities. So what has been going on is that frontline staff in both Connecticut and Rhode Island, as well as the other states, they've been participating in working sessions. So this is work that we have been doing over the course of 4 months, 4 2-hour sessions, and they are piloting this. We're going to be bringing this work nationwide. So we'll be expanding states in year 2 of this project and hopefully bringing it to every state in year 3 of this project. So you've already had a taste of what this looks like. So hopefully when this comes to your state, you'll be ready to go in doing some of this work. Okay. So we do have a couple of minutes for questions, and I want to leave it open for maybe there's something in particular that's resonating for you. How might the why that you've thought about today help with SRP 2023 specifically? Or if there's sort of anything else on your mind or something that you want to circle back to. And I will stop sharing.
I just want to call out the most recent comment in the chat, giving a sense of ownership, because it's about the communities, right? We're just sort of, as library institutions, a vessel for access, equitable access. So yeah, giving that sense of ownership should always be front and center of mind.
And we have a whole section in this that we didn't even get to about power sharing. And so I think that really speaks to sharing power. So when you're planning your summer reading program, you might, another thing, not to give you more to think about, but another thing that you might think about is, where do you hold the power? What does that look like? How does it show up? And how might you share that power with your community? Yes, community input and not just the feedback, right? Some active co-design.
Yes. Thank you, Jenna. Jen, Waterford's one of our libraries. If anyone has any questions about even just sort of what the rest of this looks like, just for, because sharing is caring, the Beebs workshop is, or it's not actually a workshop, it's a co-design, is broken down into 4 sessions. It starts with the why of summer services and equitable summer services, which is what you just got a taste of here, What we didn't even go into, because goodness knows there would not have been enough time, is letting go of tradition and sort of evaluating some of those things that we've always done and thinking about why we've always done them. Connecting with community voice for equitable summer services, and summer service impact, really sitting down and thinking about what does success look like. So if you see or hear anything about building equity-based summers through your LibGuides or newsletters or things like that, those are the 4 co-design sessions that we do now, and who knows what will change between now and next year.
All right, what do you think, Kim? I always want to leave a long silence because I know it takes a long time to get an idea out. The slide link is broken on the Google Doc. Absolutely, I will try and go and fix that. I probably did it wrong. Absolutely, I will check that out as soon as we wrap up. And I put in the chat earlier, there's a workbook section that goes along with the activities that we did today. So that's in the virtual tote bag, so you can continue to think about this. And there's some more activities in there for self-reflection. So I do really recommend checking that out. Oh, very interesting. It takes 5 to 8 times of sharing before someone becomes trusting and willing to do for you. And you never know when that seed will sprout.
That might be a great last thing to hear before we break for lunch. You know, a few minutes early. Thank you so much for sharing that.